You know what's interesting? A lot of people are already running a business. They just don't realize it yet. They call it freelancing. They call it a side hustle. They say, it's just something I do on the side. But then you look a little closer. They have clients. They're generating income. They're delivering services. And at some point, the question comes up, should I turn this into an actual business? And that's where things start to get confusing. Because now you're not just thinking about making money, you're thinking about structure, taxes, liability, compliance, and suddenly it feels like a big step. Hi, my name is Bobby Casey. I'm the founder of BusinessAnywhere.io. I'm an international tax lawyer, and for over 20 years, I've been helping entrepreneurs all over the world structure their businesses, optimize their taxes, and scale in a way that actually makes sense. And today, I want to talk about something that a lot of people struggle with, the difference between freelancing and running a business, and more importantly, when it actually makes sense to formalize what you're doing. So let's start with something simple. What's the real difference between freelancing and a business? Because on the surface, they can look very similar. You're providing a service, you're getting paid, maybe you even have repeat clients, but here's the key difference. Freelancing is typically tied directly to you. Your time, your effort, your personal involvement. If you stop working, the income stops. A business, on the other hand, is something that can operate independently of you. It has systems, it has structure, it can scale beyond just your time, and that doesn't mean you need a big team or a huge company. It just means you're building something that's not 100% dependent on you doing the work personally. Now here's where it gets interesting, because a lot of freelancers are actually sitting right in the middle. They're not just doing occasional gigs anymore. They're consistent. They have multiple clients. They're earning real income. And at that point, they're already operating like a business, just without the structure. So the real question becomes, when should you make that shift? When does it actually make sense to formalize your side hustle? Well, one of the biggest indicators is income consistency. If you're making money here and there, randomly, it might not be worth the effort yet. But if you're generating consistent income month after month, now you're in a different category. Because now you have something that's predictable. And once something is predictable, it becomes worth structuring properly. Another big factor is liability. And this is something a lot of people overlook. When you're freelancing as an individual, there's no separation between you and your business. So if something goes wrong, if there's a dispute, a lawsuit, or a financial issue, you're personally exposed. Your personal assets are on the line. Now compare that to operating through an LLC or a company structure. There's a layer of separation. It doesn't eliminate risk entirely, but it does create a level of protection, and as your business grows, that protection becomes more and more important. Then there's the tax side of things, and this is where people really start to pay attention. Because as your income increases, your tax situation becomes more complex. And if you're operating as an individual, you may not be taking advantage of certain optimizations that are available to structured businesses. Now, I'm not saying you should rush out and register a company the moment you make your first dollar. That's not the point. The point is, there comes a stage where staying informal actually starts to work against you, where you're taking on more risk, missing opportunities, and potentially paying more tax than necessary. Another thing to consider is how you present yourself, because perception matters. When you operate as a freelancer, you're often seen as an individual service provider. But when you operate as a business, there's a shift. You're seen as more established, more credible, more scalable, and that can influence the type of clients you attract and the opportunities that come your way. Now let's talk about something that holds a lot of people back: complexity. People think, if I start a business, everything becomes complicated. More paperwork, more rules, more responsibility. And yes, there is some truth to that, but it's not nearly as complicated as people imagine, especially if you set things up correctly from the beginning. In fact, in many cases, having structure actually simplifies things. You have clearer processes, cleaner financials, better organization, and ultimately, more control over how your business operates. Now, here's another angle that doesn't get talked about enough: scalability. As a freelancer, your income is limited by your time. There are only so many hours in a day. But once you start thinking like a business, you can begin to expand beyond that. You can raise your rates, you can systemize your work, you can bring in support, you can create leverage, and that's really the transition from trading time for money to building something that has the potential to grow beyond you. So if we step back and look at the bigger picture, formalizing your side hustle isn't just about paperwork. It's about positioning, it's about protection, it's about creating a foundation for growth. Now, does that mean everyone should immediately start a company? No. If you're just testing an idea, if you're not generating consistent income yet, it might make sense to stay flexible. But once you start seeing traction, once it becomes a real income stream, that's when you want to start thinking seriously about structure. Because the longer you wait, the more complicated it can become to clean things up later. And I see this all the time. People come in after the fact, trying to fix things that could have been set up properly from the beginning. So if you're in that position right now, where your side hustle is starting to feel like something more, that's your signal. That's the moment to start thinking about the next step. And if you want help with that, whether it's setting up your company, structuring things properly, or understanding the best approach for your situation, that's exactly what we do. Through our Digital Nomad Kit, we help entrepreneurs transition from informal setups to fully structured businesses. With company formation, registered agent services, compliance, bookkeeping, and personalized guidance along the way. You can find more information in the links below. And just remember, you don't have to build a massive company overnight, but at some point, you do have to decide, are you just freelancing or are you building something bigger? Hope that helps, and I'll see you in the next video.